Welcome to the Strategic Oracle, the transmission space where timing meets soul and wealth begins with the rhythm. Let's begin. Hey there, this is the podcast about the silence behind the signal. So I've led teams my entire career. It's in my blood. I love building things with good people who have incredible but untapped potential. It's just what I do. And so when I started this business, first thing I thought of doing was, okay, I'm going to build a team. And so as of a few years ago, I had a 10-person team. And I don't mean a team where you've got your SEO and you've got your marketing agency and you've got your tech people and you've got your, systems and you've got a scaling strategist. I have all that now. I'm talking about a team who was in my inner circle, doing delivery, working with my clients, doing the things that they were in their own energetic abilities and their own experiences, but they were working with clients. And so we were delivering 4 group programs a week. We had a full client roster of private clients. The work was deep, and I was still in creation mode. I was able to produce an Oracle deck and a 140-page guidebook. I was building scaffolding systems. The revenue was in line. We had $65,000 months consistently. And I was being recognized from a brand perspective that was expanding. I was in groups and on stages. And, from an outer perspective, it was, wow, it's only been a few years and I, quote unquote, had arrived. And yet, I was walking. Remember this very clearly. It was a Sunday. I was walking to brunch with my husband, Craig, and he's also a strategist and an excellent advisor. And we were in the middle of the parking lot, and I must have been saying something about business. And all of a sudden I stopped in the middle of the parking lot. I looked at him and I said, I think I'm going to get rid of my entire team. I was like, what? Wait, what? I looked at him. He looked at me. Our eyes were really wide. I blinked. He blinked. It was like time stopped. I didn't see that coming. He didn't see that coming. And yet the minute it was out of my mouth, those times where you get goosebumps, you get goosebumps or you feel the chill or whatever, I knew it was true. I hadn't thought of it. I hadn't planned on it. I just knew that it was absolute truth. Because something inside of me had already decided, but I just hadn't tapped into it. So that was a Sunday. We talked about it during brunch, and I, sometimes you just feel that relief when something's heavy, but it's not real. It's like, but maybe no. This was like, oh my God, I didn't really feel relief. I felt shock. I felt like, well, and then my mind was like, holy crap, how is this going to happen? And so the next morning I meet with Linnell, my EA, and I tell her this, and I love her. She is so immovable in the best possible way. She's just totally, literally, she's like, of course, okay. And she's like, okay, how do we want to do this? Literally just leans in. And then she dubs it the Great Turnaround. So we called it TGTA. Now I'm laughing because it's been a few years, but at the time it was shocking. I didn't think that this was even going to be a thing. And within 3 months, it was done. Team gone. And that moment, for those of you who are into the stars, was the middle of March in 2023. And you guessed it, Pluto had moved into Aquarius, probably to the day. And if you know about Pluto and astrology, then you know that Pluto's all about the truth of who you are, that raw, brutal honesty. And in Aquarius, it's about freedom and helping you align with your actual path. Not the proven one or the successful one or what not somebody else said that was a good idea, but you to the core. And so at that time, I wouldn't have said I was burned out. I wouldn't have said I was unhappy, but things had started to get heavy. The lift was just a little bit too much. And so when I look back on it, it was going to happen. I just didn't think it was going to happen in that moment, right? Because when I look back now, through the lens of the future, as we know, we always like to do, right? We're like, there's 2020, those lenses, right? But when I look back, I knew, like, it was just, again, it was just getting heavier and heavier. Things were getting more difficult. Things were getting harder. It felt like a grind. And yet your mind's like, yeah, but no, but it looks so good and it's going to be fine and all the things are going to work out, right? So, um, something underneath said, this is not true for me. You cannot continue down this path. I was not completely in my own rhythm with that 10-person team and the 4 groups a week and creating and being visible. My rhythm was knocked off center. I wasn't being true to me. And so, again, externally, I scaled something that looked perfect. It was powerful. But yet inside, it was like, nope. And instead of it coming slowly, Pluto kind of knocked it in immediately. And so it was a really vulnerable time. I'm known to be a strategist. I've built, things repeatedly based on team. I am the person who can recognize the full potential of a person or a situation or an organization or life. And yet here I am, like, yes, the potential is there. Oh, wait a minute. It's not me growing into my potential. Uh-oh, it's not my business growing into its own potential. And honestly, crap, right? So it was vulnerable, it was awkward, and it was uncomfortable, but it wasn't unknown. Because once I said yes to that, and once I really opened up to it, I had an inner sense and an inner space that I hadn't had in a few years. It felt like a lot of times we can just fill that space and we just start filling it with other things. I didn't do that. I let it go into abeyance. I let it kind of sit and stir and marinate because I have worked in the silence. This is something that I do and I do really well. I've been meditating for, 20 years. I've developed my inner knowing and I've been using it for more than a decade. So I wasn't uncomfortable per se because I knew that there was such truth here. I just didn't know what it meant or what it was or what it was going to develop into. So I leaned in a little bit. I leaned into, like, well, what's the relief here? Oh, okay, you know what? Yeah, great. I built something that wasn't really aligned with me. Maybe it was aligned with me when I started building it. And it was aligned with me up until a certain point, but there became a tipping point that it was no longer. There was some point in that scaling of success that was just like, went off a trajectory. It was probably only a gear or two or a degree or two, but that was enough to kind of tip it out of my own lane. And so I couldn't have really said it was burnout. It wasn't breakdown. It wasn't anything like that. It was just this internal discordance. It was like this misfiring signal. And so that silence that I sat in, I didn't look at it as failure. I didn't look at it as blame. I didn't look at it as judgment, even though the judgment would have been really easy to go into. Anytime I slipped into it, I pulled myself out. And I said, "You know what? This is truth. This is just truth. And if it's just truth, how can I sit in the truth of this and let it reveal itself?" And there's Pluto for you guys. I mean, literally, there's Pluto, right? And if you remember the time, 23, 24, it was like going in and out of Capricorn, like relentlessly, right? Capricorn, Aquarius. I happen to be a Capricorn, so I don't know if it hit me any more than it hit anybody else, but I certainly did, this massive change based on it, right? And here's the deal. Even though I didn't feel like it was failure, I did feel like I wasn't comfortable talking about this because we don't really talk about stuff like this. we like when things are growing and people are successful, and we love to celebrate them, and we love to be in the group, in the room, or like listening to the conversation, because we feel as if that's going to shine on to us, right? And sure, we can hang with somebody for a hot minute, right? So I remember I was as part of a leadership group, and I was in the room, and it was truth tell, and I said it. It was like the first thing, it was, ooh, gee, and people hung with me for that one conversation. And I super appreciated it. It was really, really helpful. But then, it took me 3 months to do this, right? So I was in this very awkward pivot. And honestly, the leader of that group wouldn't really tolerate it. She loved it when she could say, oh, I have a member of my group that has a 10-person team and blah, blah, blah. And here are the numbers and here's all the things. Now, all of a sudden, that was not really a story that she really wanted to tell. So I became persona non grata. And I had to figure out if I cared or not. And then I had to figure out what I was going to do. It was interesting because that group went through massive change too. So I kind of got an abeyance there, and that was fine. But it is something that people don't lean into. They lean in when we're growing. They celebrate when we have momentum and visibility and impact. But when we're in conversation with each other, we don't often ask, but what is it costing you? Now, if somebody comes up and says, "Oh my God, I'm exhausted. It feels heavy. It's burnt out." Yeah, we're there. In the right room, we're there, right? But when we're looking at somebody that's in that striving zone, we're really looking at it with rose-colored glasses, right? Because we don't ask. I'm going to say it again. We don't ask, like, what is this costing your rhythm? Can you breathe inside of what you've built? Those are really good questions to ask, because for me, the answer was absolutely no. And luckily enough for me, I was brave enough to say, I stopped. And when I stopped, I mean, I stopped. It took like 3 months to unwind things. And then it just happened to be like on the calendar, happened to be summertime. I took some space. I hired some strategists across like the business, array. I went and I sought healing. I mean, I really went in and said, I want to breathe into this. And so in the new space, I sat with it, I let it stir. And then on the surface, as it's probably like 6 months later, you could see this emergence, right? Like you could see this, oh, she's coming out of the chrysalis now. But yes, but no, because I did it as a stopgap. So I had a beautiful client container. I did one small group. Still known as the astrologer, still known as the master strategist, still creating. This is when I launched the podcast. I wrote a book. I was very much in creation mode. I looked at my calendar and I stripped things away from it. Fridays only working on the business, 10 creation weeks, vacation time. I mean, I had a different rhythm and a different tempo because I was remembering myself again. I was trying to figure out, not through my mind, but through my whole entire being, where could I breathe inside of something that I built? What does my rhythm want to create? I let that achieving and that producing go. And I went into my energetic field. And you then started hearing me say, oh, the stars are awaiting our instruction, not to lead us, but to lead with us. Oh, the earthly frequencies are connecting. And started talking about sacred geometry and quantum physics and really feeling it. Maybe not here in the podcast or out in the public sphere, but certainly in my client containers and certainly in people that were really close to me, because I was opening myself up and breathing again. And I was saying yes to myself with precision, remembering that I can go to the origin point of the truth of who you are, and I can see that untapped potential, and I can get to the root. And so I was finding something that I had forgotten. I wasn't looking to ideate. I wasn't looking to do a rebrand and to just shift like from this success model to that success model. I was letting the energies percolate and that silence build. And I was getting in touch with my own original rhythm. And the revelations are amazing. I'm not going to share them all here, because the only one I want to be having you be able to gain the essence of is this term of a signature codex. So just bear with me because I'm going to explain it. Because this wasn't just a brainstorm or a download. This was like total body remembering. This isn't a system. It isn't like, ooh, like dot all the I's, cross all the T's. This is me at my core. This is the original pattern that my brilliance was built on. This is the moment that you are in your purest essence before you start building for everyone else, before you start getting led by cultural norms or societal expectations or familial conditioning. You've heard me talk about those things in the early days of this business. I haven't been talking about it lately because I've been stirring what's underneath it. Because this is a pulse. It's like a clean signal of who we are before performance. And it's that underlying structure underneath all the systems, whether it's your body or your energy or your team, if you have one, or your business. And once you start really opening to it, which we all are in the world, you can see what no longer fits. And so when you start seeing what no longer fits, it starts getting heavier. It starts moving away. There starts to be some tension there and some triggers and some pushing and some pulling and some power plays and things. That's where the tensions rise. And once you say, oh, wait a minute, you know what? This isn't mine. This isn't me. It's easy to recognize what isn't. But what about what is? How do you get to that? So for me, this is the way I serve. I'm not going to give you just, oh, boom, here's the answer. So I've moved away from that revelation. I'm going to help you remember the infrastructure of your own knowing. Not to guide you, but to restore you. So this is about returning you to who you truly are. That rhythm of you, that structure of you, and that silence that holds your truth. It's that incredible ability to create based on creation, a creation of you. So I am so thrilled to be able to talk about this right now because I have been waiting. I would love to say I've been waiting with bated breath. That would be a lie. I've been waiting for the cosmos and for the earth and for people's readiness to be in alignment. Now, as an intuitive visionary, you know that that's not something that I would normally do. And I'm giggling because it's true. There's so many times I'm just too ahead and I'm just not in the place where people are ready to hear it. But this was too important for that. So here we are right now in these energies. And if you are hearing this, then you are ready for that listening and for that absorbing. And so this podcast, yes, this is when the rebranding is coming. It wasn't enough, the stars. It wasn't enough to talk about the stars. We had to talk about you, the strategic oracle for visionary leaders. I'm the strategic oracle. You're the visionary leader. And for you to own that you're the visionary leader and for me to own that I am the strategic oracle. So I can speak and transmit and you can receive. So I'm not thinking about visibility. If you notice, I'm not doing, CTAs. I'm not saying rate review. I'm not saying any of that. I'm asking and deliciously stirring your ability to be able to receive. Because this is about returning to you, your originality, your brilliance, your structure, your right frequency for who you are. To the mysticism that you wrote in your own imprint before anybody else got involved. So if you felt that pause or that break or that whisper that says this isn't mine anymore, not to judge, not to rail, not to fight, you are not broken. You're just being recalibrated. This is to file you within your own system correctly. And so if you're still listening, you felt it too. Maybe not recently, maybe not fully, but somewhere in your body or your energetic system, you know what your signal used to sound like, and you know it's time to come back to it. This is the first step. So again, I don't have an ask, don't have an agenda. I just have resonance. And let's sit with the silence of this. Because in that silence, you are welcoming you to yourself once again. And welcome back. You've been listening to the Strategic Oracle, where success isn't scaled from speed, but from soul. If this stirred something real, follow it. Apply for activation, enter the vault, or pause right here. Integration is leadership too. Because the truth is, you were never meant to chase the timing. You are meant to become it.